Hello friends, I'm Jana Eubank, and my challenge for you today is old school tools are cool. I'm so glad to be here at the Erica Rose Creates Crop this weekend, and I wanted to make a video ahead of time because Saturdays are crazy and I just didn't know how it would go. But anyway, I wanted to tell you a little bit about my challenge before I get into my process. This challenge was inspired by these two photos. These are pictures of my two of my daughters, my oldest and youngest, hanging out with their cousins at a museum. And my oldest daughter was teaching her cousins how to create paper cranes. Well, I was thinking I would put an actual paper crane on this layout that I'm going to do with these photos, but my daughter lives 40 minutes away. I looked it up online and I'm like, you know, I could probably make one, but I didn't like that I couldn't determine the size of it very well. So I decided to look through an old cartridges by Cricut, and there happens to be a paper crane image in this cartridge called Wild Card. And so I thought, you know what? I still love my Cricut machine, my old school Cricut machine. And so that's what I thought I would do my challenge around today, is pulling out one of your old school tools, or whether it's the old Cricut machine with your cartridges, or maybe the first punches you ever bought, or those pattern scissors, or that paper crimper. Pick something that you first bought as a scrapbooker. I've been scrapbooking a long time, so I have a wide variety of tools to choose from, but pick one and incorporate it on your layout. That's my challenge for you today. I'm excited about using this cartridge because I think there are so many different images. Not only is there that little paper crane image that I can size to whatever size I want, there's an alphabet in here, there's envelopes, there's different icons like leaves and cupcakes and flowers and general things that I can incorporate. There was also this background piece, let me see if I can find it, that I thought might be really cute to use on this page that has stars. And so there's a lot of images on these older cartridges that we haven't utilized, and that I haven't utilized, and so I thought it'd be fun to pull out my old school Cricut machine and put it to good use. I actually used to work for Cricut, and so I have almost all the cartridges that were ever made before they went to digital, and so I'm sentimental about them. I don't want to get rid of them because that was a time in my life that I really enjoyed. I loved that job. It was a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and get into the layout and see where we can go with all of these older school tools. Now the papers that I'm using today are from an older Hip Kit Club. It's from September 2021 Hip Kits. And I purchased just the paper pack on one of those clearance sales that they had last November. So all I had was the papers. It's a mixture of a Hip Kit Club exclusives called September Days, and then it also has a mixture of Pink Fresh Studio The Best Day collection in it. And I mention that because you can't get the Hip Kit Club exclusives anymore. They're sold out. However, the Best Day collection is still available on scrapbook.com and a cherry on top if you're curious. So I'm going to start out with this library card background paper in that dusty navy or grayish navy color in the background, and then I used a section of Pink Fresh Studio plaid paper to go on top. I'm now pulling out my Cricut, and I'm going to cut this star pattern in several sizes. I start off doing it in several sizes because I haven't used my Cricut for a while, so I'm just refamiliarizing myself with it. So I cut out that star pattern in a few different sizes. I found one that I thought might work, and then I went ahead and cut out that paper crane image. I'll come back to my Cricut in a second, but for now I'm just going to get the base of my layout design put together. So I'm going to use this plaid paper and mat it with some white, and then I love the splash of yellow that's in that Best Day collection, and there's that really pretty plaid or gingham check paper off to the side. I'm going to use that to add some scallops to the top and bottom of my page. Now I know this gingham pattern isn't really going to show, so I'm just going to cut a few strips with the dark part of the gingham check, and I'm going to pull out my pattern scissors. These ones I actually still use quite a bit. These are from Provo Craft, and which, if you didn't know, owns Cricut, and they had a craft store here for a while in Utah. They don't anymore, but they sold these scissors and that were exclusive to them, and this large scallop are ones that I turn to often even still. So this one, the hard part about cutting with pattern scissors is, in this instance, it's really hard to get the top and bottom pattern the same or centered even. So my scallop pattern isn't centered, but it doesn't matter in the long run because I will overlap those borders with some embellishments and things in the end, and I don't think you really pay attention to it. And I wanted to add another layer behind the scallops peeking out, so I decided to go with this blue floral pattern from Pink Fresh Studio. On the back side there was that large floral piece that I wanted to fussy cut out. I wasn't sure if I would use it on this project, but I just made sure to flip over my pattern paper before cutting it and preserve that floral piece. So I do end up using that large floral. At first I thought I would use that those stars, that star cluster, but I end up fussy cutting those florals and put them there instead. So this is kind of the direction that I'm thinking of going with my layout, and here is where I'm going to go ahead and fussy cut out that large floral. Now I don't have any of the best day embellishments from Pink Fresh Studio either, but I did happen to get a sampler kit from SCT, from Scrapbooking Cards Today magazine, back at that same time, and so I had just like 6 pattern papers in 6x6 sizes, and then I had a few die cuts in there that, you know, because they just give you a little sampling of everything. So I have a few die cuts, a few stickers, some of the sheets, paper sheets, some enamel dots. So I had this little slice of paper from the Pink Fresh Studio collection that has these leaf branches on it, and I thought that I would fussy cut those out as well just to help me build out those floral clusters. I'm going to start experimenting with the placement of those leaf branches in that floral cluster, but in the meantime, I'm also going to go back to that wild card Cricut cartridge and cut out a few more elements. Now, as far as my title, I wanted to look through that cartridge and see if there were any of the pre-made phrases that might work. And I decided to go with this one that says, "Just because." Now, my daughters were hanging out with their cousins just because, just for fun, so I thought that might work. I cut it out with white cardstock, and then I cut out a second layer in a golden yellow color. Now that doesn't exactly match that citron or a citrine yellow color in the background, but it does coordinate with the yellow flower centers, and so I think it works well here. While I was in that cartridge, I found these berry branches, so I cut out several in a 2-inch size, and I'm going to use that to build out my floral clusters as well. So let's go ahead and start working on this. Now I'm going to adhere these 2 shadow layers together of this title, and then I'm going to pop it up with some 1/8 inch foam tape from scrapbook.com. I love that 1/8 inch foam tape because it is super thin and super easy to work with. So let's go ahead and get that title in place, and then I'm going to take a moment and work on that flower cluster. I'll just let you watch that for a minute. As I work with these leaves, what I'm paying attention to is the color of the leaves. They're not all the same, but I am trying to balance out the color. The colors that I do have multiples of are that light blue or periwinkle blue color. So I placed one of the leaf branches in that color in the top left, and then I'm placing some more little leaves of those over in the bottom right, just to go along with that diagonal flow. I also have some of those yellow branches, so I'm trying to balance out the yellow color. And then I also have a pink leaf branch that I'm trying to build a visual triangle around that main photo. You can see I have the pink leaves at the top, and then the 2 large pink flowers again form that visual triangle. After I get those in a roundabout place where I think they will go, I'm going to come back in and tuck in those berry branches just to fill it out. That really light, subtle white color just adds more texture than anything, and I really like how that looks here. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these in place with my Nuvo liquid glue, and then I will add that paper crane to the bottom right corner of the photo. As I mentioned before, I only have a few embellishments from that Pink Fresh Studio collection. You can see I have a few die cuts, I have a little portion of the sticker sheet, I have a strip of the chipboard circles, and then I had the enamel dots as well as a few die cuts, but I think I mentioned that already. So I'm just going to start tucking in the little pieces that I have. I'm going to add that postage stamp and the tag die cut to the top of the page, overlapping them and just staggering them above the photo. I thought that would be a fun opportunity to bring in some softness where I could tie some white twine onto that tag. I have this ticket piece here that I'm going to repeat the yellow color with, and I'm going to cut some of these die cuts in half so that I can use them in multiple places. On the right side of the page, I have that navy blue circle that says Happy Fall. So even though this is a fall collection, I'm just going to cover up those sentiments by tucking them behind the other layers. So I'm using that half of that navy circle on the right and then the other half of that ticket there. I pulled off one of these chipboard circles and added it to the top corner of my photo. I didn't super love that, but it stuck to that glossy paper, and so I wasn't able to move it. So I just decided to work with it. So I play with that ticket there for a minute. And then I switch gears and I think, well, I'll go back and add the twine to the tag. And then I'm like, well, wait, what if I layer up these chipboard circles? But nope, didn't like that either. This is where I try to peel it all off. But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have to work with it. So I go ahead and move that little ticket, or that second half of the ticket next to that chipboard circle so that it kind of steps down from there, and then I'm going to work with the other die cut pieces. So to balance out that navy circle, I'm going to place the other half on the left side of the page, and that helps your eye to travel across the design. And then I had one more little die cut that I thought might sneak in here behind that top right cluster. I popped out the little dots in there, and then I thought I'm going to thread the edge of that with that white twine that will also be in the top of the tag, just to continue that soft texture. And then I was going to tuck it behind the cluster on the right, but as I auditioned it on the page, I actually really liked it on that cluster on the top left. So I'm going to place that there. I actually really like the pop of pink that adds to the center of the page as well. I also had this green thankful die cut that looks like a ticket. I just tucked that behind the top right edge of the photo. And even though that's the only green cardstock die cut on this page, it works there because it's balancing out the green color of my niece's t-shirt in the bottom left corner of the page. I had that rainbow strip sticker there, and I decided to place that under the bottom edge because I'm planning on putting a journal block below my title, and I thought with that diagonal flow of the flowers, that stripe will grab your eye and lead it down into the journaling. Now I had that odd space to the right of the title, and I wasn't quite sure what to do there, but I did have one of the fussy cut flowers, the black and white flowers. Actually, that might be one of the die cuts that looks like the flower from the pattern paper, and I just tucked that flower stem behind the right edge of the title, and it fit perfectly. I'll add some white twine to the top of the tag. This time I'm just knotting and looping it on the top of the tag, and then I'm securing it in place with some of the Nuvo liquid adhesive so that it doesn't get caught or flop around. Now I have those stars from the inside of the star border that I cut at the beginning of the page, and I thought I might tuck those in to balance out that golden yellow color of the title. I just auditioned them on the page for a moment, and then I thought, well, they might be too big. So I went back to the enamel dots. I'll place a few of those around the page, and I like the texture that those add. Now I did like the golden yellow color, and so I decided to revisit that. This time I'm pulling out my old school primitive star punch, and I've decided that instead of the larger stars from the inside of that star piece that I cut earlier, I'm just going to punch out some smaller stars and scatter them around the page. So I've placed one to the left of that salmon pink phrase, and then I've placed two in the upper right corner of the page. Now I'm also going to do another old school technique that goes back to those primitive star shapes where you do a little cross stitch in the middle of each of those designs. So I've used some blue thread to repeat the blue color that are in the leaves of the flower clusters, and then I did one that was pink just to repeat that pink color that that was in the flowers. So that finishes out the embellishing for this page for the most part. So I'm going to switch gears and type out my journaling. Now I typed out my journaling on a journal block on my computer and then printed it with cardstock. I left some space along the bottom so that I could use another pair of my pattern scissors to add another scallop edge. This time I did a smaller scallop. This one is called Clouds, and it's more shallow and it's more stretched out. Again, I'm struggling getting this pattern centered there. Unfortunately, I left a big enough space on the bottom that I could try my hand at it a couple times. My second attempt wasn't any better, but you know what? I just decided to run with it. I like that it adds a little feminine detail to the bottom of this journal cluster or this journal block, and I'll just center that below my title so that that is all lined up. Now the last thing I thought I would do is add some more texture to this page by using an edge distressing tool or my scissors to rough up the edges of that floral paper. And oh my gosh, I love the thickness of Pink Fresh Studio paper. It was so much fun to distress. I don't know if you've ever distressed the edges of this paper, but because it's so thick, it just was kind of curled and was so yummy. I loved it. Now the final thing I thought I would do was add in some white splatters around the page just to kind of marry everything together. So I'm using some scrap pieces of white paper to just cover up my photos, and then I'll sprinkle some of that white paint along over the flower clusters, the title, and next to the journal block. And that will complete the page. So you guys, I hope you have fun watching this. I hope that you'll grab some old school tools from your stash and give them a try, whether it's the pattern scissors, maybe you've got some old punches or punch boards, or even an old Cricut machine. All right guys, my name is Jana Eubank. Thanks for watching and have fun at the crop.